Hello, YouTube. This is day one of what may be a very long chronicling of the next movie that I'm going to make. My name is Jack Schaberg, and a brief history of my movie making. In 2003, after a long time of writing spec scripts that never went anywhere, I decided that one way to make sure to have one of my movies on the silver screen was to make it myself and to rent a theater and to put it up there. And so in 2003, we released the first of what became three feature films. This one was called We No Care. It was shot mostly on one location on mini DV, so the quality wasn't great. We ended up doing pretty well, even though we literally had one showing. We probably had close to 200 people there, and then we sold some DVDs. And I think the highlight, not of the whole experience, but of showing it, was that afterwards, the manager of the movie theater had a DVD that he had bought, and he asked me to autograph it. And that was kind of sounds silly, but that was really cool. The second one was called The End of Art, and we released that in 2006, I believe. I wonder if the first one was 2006 and End of Art was 2009. I'll have to check that. Anyways, The End of Art was a little bit more ambitious, a bigger cast, probably, I don't know, at least 15 or 20 locations. And unfortunately, we still had to shoot on mini DV. So again, the quality is not great. It is on YouTube. If you go and search probably The End of Art and then Jack Schaberg, you could find it. If you do, you will be one of a very few because it was not widely watched. What we did with that one, as I recall, is I think we rented, and when I say we, I mean me, rented a theater, I think on 3 consecutive days, and showed it. And I mean, it did okay. Obviously, none of these made money. But on the other hand, none of them cost much to make. We had all volunteer cast and crew, and so out-of-pocket expense, very, very small. So after that, this was about the time when HD cameras, DSLRs, were becoming more readily available at a decent price. And so at the time, I bought the Canon T2i, and it seemed like it was $1,100 or $1,200. And we used that for the third movie, which ended up being released in either 2011 or 12. The reason I'm hesitant on that is because I think after I showed it in a theater, I went back and made a few very small revisions for kind of like the final DVD and Blu-ray. I had the luxury, after seeing it in a theater with a bunch of people, I think I saw 2 or 3 scenes that maybe weren't really needed or something. And so I either cut them out completely or I cut them back. Interesting about that movie is that during the lockdowns of 2020, 2021, 2022, I was watching Prime one day and I saw this awful movie and I thought to myself, wow, if that movie could be on Prime, why couldn't The Key? So I went back and I added closed captioning and I did whatever else was needed on the technical standpoint and I submitted it. And a little bit to my surprise, they accepted it. And then I think I made it for free, or you could, rent it for 99 cents or buy it or something. And they, of course, count everything in minutes in terms of how many people have watched. And I believe over the next 3 or 4 months, this would have been like March, April, May 2021. I think unfortunately, they don't keep all the data, and they say if you don't download it in 60 days or 90 days, it goes away, which is kind of silly. I don't know why they would do that. Anyways, it was maybe 500 minutes here, 1,000 minutes there, which is the equivalent of 5 people or 10 people watching the movie. So it wasn't a lot, but it was kind of cool to know that A, it was on Amazon, and B, it was available for people to watch. And then, so I don't know if it was the following year, like in February, March of 22. Again, they scrubbed all the records, so I don't know. At some point, though, it must have got either recommended by, or it said, if you like this, you'll also like The Key. And strangely enough, this was in the UK. And so there was a 3 month period when it was getting, and this, I mean, in a way it sounds like a lot, in a way it doesn't sound like a lot, but it got, 1,000 minutes, 2,000 minutes, 5,000 minutes here and there. And I think over a 3 or 4 month period, it must have been on some rotation. It got, I think, like 50,000 minutes, which is 500 views start to finish because it's 100 minutes long basically. And so that was pretty cool. And, it made me feel good. It didn't make me any money. I think, maybe over the course of the entire Amazon run, it's made $57 or $58. And again, this was all volunteer cast and crew. The cast was 6 main people and probably 10 day players, if you will, that were in a scene or two. It had a lot of locations. It was pretty ambitious for what it was. Again, a no budget movie, and we had to shoot it on nights and weekends over. Again, I probably scrubbed it from my memory, but it was over a year. And at one point, the lead actress cut like 8 or 10 inches off her hair, but fortunately, it was so long that we couldn't really tell. Anyways, that was a major undertaking. And because it was HD, it still holds up well. I mean, it's obviously a very low budget movie when you watch it, but the movie itself is pretty good. The performances, I would say, are pretty good. I think the story is good. It could always be better, but certainly nothing that I was ashamed of. And we showed that, I think, just one day and maybe 3 times, like 5, 7, and 9. And I think the main cast came to the first one or the second one, so that was fun. And man, sitting in the theater and just listening and watching the reactions of people laughing at the right place or, gasping or whatever you want them to do, it is remarkable. There's nothing like it. So if you're a screenwriter or a director or, anything in the creative realm of filmmaking, but especially a screenwriter, as a sidebar, I had written for many, many, many years, written many, many specs, gotten virtually nowhere. I had done a little bit of like script doctoring, and I had been hired to write a very low budget movie, which unfortunately went in production, but then the director producer ran out of money because he was sort of mismanaging things. And that was kind of a bummer. And he didn't pay me all the money that he promised me, but whatever, it wasn't much to begin with. Where was I going with this? If you're a screenwriter and you have written nothing, or if you've written 10 scripts, or if you've written 30 scripts and haven't gotten anywhere in terms of sold anything or gotten any super real interest, and I don't know if that would put you in the 1% or the 1/10 of 1%, but I strongly recommend that you make a movie. That is what I did, as I said, after all these years. And I did have a film production background. I went to USC and got into their film school. And so, I knew my way around the camera. Still, of course, I had a guy shoot it. I had a guy do sound for it. I had a guy write the score for it. I have edited my movies because that's what I do at my day job. I edit not movies, but all kinds of different videos and stuff. So I knew my way around the technology and the hardware and the equipment to some extent, enough to know if people were doing things right. But anyways, if you don't know any of that, if you have to shoot it on your iPhone, the sound isn't going to be good, which unfortunately is a big, big factor. So if you do shoot something on your phone, I would still get an external microphone. Anyways, the point is, write something you can make. It is amazing exercise. It's amazing experience. You will learn a ton. What I learned, one of the things that sticks out is that, I spent a year and a half at least working on all the scripts. And where this is all leading, you'll see hopefully why it makes sense what I'm saying. Anyways, what I learned was that once you got on set, you would have the scene you were going to shoot, if it was 3 pages or a page and a half or whatever. And no one would care if you wrote, he dashed into the room and grabbed a cup of coffee and smacked it down or something. No one cares about your verbs, your adjectives, your adverbs, your descriptions, or anything. As they say, it's a blueprint. And my experience is once you get on the set, all people care about is the dialogue, which in my case, I don't know if I'm overprotective of it or not, but I really do care that people say the dialogue the way it's written because of the plot and because of clues that it may reveal and blah, blah, blah. The point is, make a movie. It might be horrible. If it is, there's a good chance that that was because of the script. Could be because of the actors. It could be because of a lot of things. But if you just write big budget movies, the chances that they're going to get made are probably 1 in a million, if that. Let's be real about it. No one is going to invest 50 million, 100 million, let alone 200 or 300 million dollars in a writer with no credits. Sad but true. Someone, I'm sure, will prove me wrong on that, but that is the vast exception and not the rule. So I'll implore you one more time. If you're serious about your craft, even if you don't want to be a director, even if you don't know how to edit, you can find someone who can do all of that stuff. You can find a bunch of people who will do it, and most likely will do it for free or for very little. You can find someone with a camera. You can find someone with editing software. You can use DaVinci Resolve. You can download it for free, and it does everything you need to make a fairly simple movie. No excuses. Go out and make a film. But before you do, write an amazing script. This isn't, I just realized I'm not doing this to educate anyone. I'm doing this as a background information for what I hope is to come. What I hope is to come is a new movie. So 2012 basically was the end of The Key. We sold a few DVDs and Blu-rays. Again, didn't make any money. But the only expense we had really was the camera and a few other things. So maybe $1,500 worth of $1,500 of actual cash outlays. So I took a time off. I was still writing spec scripts, not the big ones, but writing a number, probably during that time, 6 scripts over maybe a 10-year period ish. And, I felt like I was getting better at my craft, but I wasn't making anything that I could make myself. I think probably purposely without a couple $1 million. Although I did write one that could probably be made for maybe $500,000. So if you've got that, in your back pocket, let me know and I'll send you the script. So 2.5 years ago, approximately, one of my sons, who is an actor, along with his twin brother, said, "Dad, I think it's time for you to write another script that you can make, AKA that we can be in." I was very happy to do this because growing up, we made a lot of short films together, and they are bona fide actors. They don't make a living at it yet, but they're very good. And so obviously I had many incentives to do this. One was to make another movie. One was to see them in the movie. Number 3 was to write parts for them, knowing who they were. And then I also wrote one of the roles for a woman who was in The Key. I wrote a role for someone who has been in all 3 of my movies. And I wrote another part for a guy that I met through work who is just kind of a natural. He's done acting and performing in the past. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's one more part, which I will name at a later date, which my sons are kind of looking around for someone to play that part, which is sort of the lead. Well, it's sort of an ensemble piece, but she definitely has a very, very big role. She's sort of the main character and has the main character arc. So where are we right now? Well, I started writing it in 2023 in January. It may have been December of 22. It started out, I won't get too deep into this, but you can turn the video off whenever you like, so maybe I will. One of my sons, their brother, oldest son, had a job at one point at Bad Hat Harry Productions, which was Bryan Singer's production company. It was an internship. And I don't know if he did this or he got the idea of someone who answers the phone when people call with ideas. And so the original idea was that this guy, and this is not a unique idea because I've seen other films similar to this. So he basically steals the idea, he writes the movie, it gets made, and then the person who actually pitched the idea finds him and comes after him. So it was going to be sort of a thriller, psychological thriller. That was the very first iteration. I never wrote it, but that's kind of what I was thinking. So when I started thinking about it more, and he and I batted some ideas back and forth a little, although it was mostly me. So the first draft, and when I say first draft, this was probably 8 or 10 drafts, but the first copy that I sent out for external eyes was sort of a thriller, psychological thriller. I won't go into all the details, but I had a lot of questions about it. And after 3 or 4 people read it, the pretty much universal agreement was that kind of a cool idea, but the execution was not good. A lot of credibility problems, a lot of character problems, a lot of questions of why would this happen, or why would she do this, or why would he do that? So that was about 8 months of work down the drain. Not quite down the drain, because I got, what did I get out of that? I've got the 2 main characters. At that time, they were the main characters. And I won't go into all the details. And I think I came up with the rough character of an older woman who was the screenwriter who had actually submitted the idea. And then I got a younger woman who turns out to be the person in this current version. So anyways, the point is, it wasn't 8 months totally down the drain, but it was 8 months. So the major problem was that psychological thrillers, because I think it ended up 1 or 2 people got killed, and it wasn't really grisly or gruesome, but it really wasn't me. And I kind of took a step back and said, first of all, what is this story about? And then, is this a story I want to tell? Is it kind of anything to do with my philosophy, my outlook on life, and the themes, and, the wants and the needs and all that kind of stuff? Pardon the scratching. And then I determined it wasn't. So I took a big step back, took probably at least a month off, 2 weeks, a month off, worked on some other stuff. And then I said, well, what am I good at based on the movies I've made so far? And I decided to go the comedy route, which might seem a little bit strange. And more particularly sort of a quirky comedy. At first I was thinking like, broad, not quite slapstick, but laugh out loud, which is good in theory, but it's pretty daunting when you start to write and you just know that everything you write has to be quote unquote funny. So I started on that, and it's always easy to get some jokes and gags and laughs in the first several pages. And so as it went on, I sort of reinvented the story. I had the core of the story, and like so many things, even if I look back at my early drafts, don't know that I would know for sure how I arrived at what I arrived at. But whereas in the first version, there was one main young man, and he basically, his twin, you weren't never sure if the twin was a figment of his imagination, or sort of a Jekyll and Hyde sort of thing. And so in the second one, I made two people, and it was obvious from the beginning that there were 2 of them. And then I had a young woman, and it was sort of a love story, but it was a little creepy because there were 2 guys and 1 girl. And then I think I did a pass with the older woman, and I took the younger woman out. And then I think I had the idea at some point that the older writer, thinking that she was over the hill, she basically went out and hired this actress to play the part of the writer, or at least to pitch the idea. And again, it's a little fuzzy because this was 18 months ago, and a lot of writing has taken place between now and then. So I did that. I worked on that for many months, sent it off to my sons who are going to be in it, and the older son who had the basic idea. And they gave me some good feedback. I don't know if at that point I may have sent it to a couple other writers that I knew from Facebook groups. That I knew from Facebook groups, and the feedback was better, so I knew I was going in the right direction, but it still wasn't really working for a number of reasons. I'm just thinking back as I'm talking to the endings that just weren't working. It was a little confusing whose story it was, et cetera, et cetera. So this was probably this was probably midway through 2023. Is that right? I started it in 22. No, I started in 23. So this was probably midway through 2024. So I didn't scrap it. I pretty much had the characters, but I went back to square one and I realized that it wasn't the twin story. It was the young actress's story. And I won't give what happens away at this point if you keep watching and if you become a member of the Dummy Line Squad, which the working title is Dummy Line, politically incorrect, maybe. The point is, if you want to learn more and become a part of this, you can invest in it. It'll be the worst investment you've ever made. I'll take as little as $10 and as much as $1 million, no more than $1 million. So Elon, save your money. So I kept working on it and I felt better about it. And even then, over the next 7 months, maybe, it underwent not any page one rewrites, but a lot of work. I was getting it out to more writers. They were pointing things out. And controversially enough, is that a word? Very controversially. It was a big controversy, whatever. About 2 months ago, I submitted parts of it to various AI chatbot, GPT, and the Google Gemini, and then X's Grok. Amazingly enough, and you may hate me for this, writers out there, I got a lot of great feedback. Obviously, I got it very quickly. And I even asked one of them, I said, well, are you going to do anything with my script? Are you going to steal the ideas? Because I didn't really know how AI worked. And I was assured that no, in fact, basically, as soon as it reads it and it gives you feedback, it forgets when you log out of your session or turn off your computer or whatever. It doesn't remember anything you wrote. And I know that because several times I would have to re-upload sections. And I said, based on this, which you've already read and you've given me feedback on and you've forgotten, I'm going to give you these first 20 pages so I can then submit 10 or 20 new ones or something like that. So again, you may hate me. It may be very controversial. Sorry about that. I did it and I'm a believer in it, at least to an extent. I got very good feedback. Fairly insightful, not super duper duper pooper insightful, but so I would do little rewrites based on some ideas, and I wouldn't always do them because sometimes it missed stuff or whatever. But between that and 3 or 4 screenwriters that I have come to know, I got more good feedback. My sons kept giving me good feedback. From an actor standpoint, it's very interesting to get actors' input on this. So here we are in March of 2025. So it's been 2 years and basically we'll call it 2 months that I've been working on this script, which probably seems crazy for a super low budget, or maybe because it's super low budget and I'm going to make it myself, maybe that isn't crazy. I've always been of the mind that the more time you spend on a script, hopefully the less time you're going to have to spend fixing it in post-production. And then, of course, the other thing with spending a lot of time on a script is that you darn well better want to make it after you've invested 2+ years of your life writing it. So where are we today? We have not got a cast. We have not got a crew. We have not got locations. But right now, I am pointing to that camera right up there. Right up there. Where does it go? That's weird. Anyways, I am making a commitment that we are going to make this movie. And I say we, and sometimes you hear politicians use the word we, and you go, no, Jack, it's really just you. But in this case, if there's any case to be made of the we, it is going to be this one, because without a bunch of help that I'm going to get, most of it, some of it will still be volunteer. I think I will have some money to pay some people, at least expenses, but I don't know. I have to buy a camera. I could rent one, but I think I want to buy one. If anyone out there has a camera they want to give me, or more likely have recommendations, I'm looking at Blackmagic camera, perhaps the Sony FX3. I know hardware does not make the film, but anyways, back to the point. So at any time, if anyone wants to contact me about investing in it, as I said, it's the worst investment you'll ever make, like most films. But if you've got money that you literally don't care if you never see again, I will give you a DVD, which I'm sure is exciting, or a Blu-ray, or maybe I'll invite you to the premiere. But that's not the point of this. The point is that one way or another, we are going to get this made. And so I wanted to commit on video to doing this because of the, what do they say about affirmations, or if you say it out loud, you make it more real or whatever. So that's what I'm doing today. Today is March 8th. I don't know when I'll release this. Maybe I'll have second thoughts after doing a little editing and putting this thing together. But I'm pretty happy with the script. My son's, one of them who's read it, is pretty happy. He gave me like 3 ideas that were just kind of little issues that I fixed, very easy to fix. I've started going through it in Movie Magic Screenwriter, which I know is a dated program, and it's so bad compared to all the new ones. Guess what? I own it, and it doesn't cost me anything to use, and it works. So I've been breaking it down a little in that. I'll continue to do that. As I told my sons, and they know, when you make a film yourself, let alone for no money, this guy right here, the producer, the director, the writer, the editor, is going to have a lot of help along the way, but he's going to have to do a lot of work himself. So I've begun that work. So I just wanted to make this I'm sure will be the longest and most boring of the entries. And what will I commit to do? Maybe making one of these every week. Certainly once it gets going, like we're in actual pre-production and scouting and everything. Certainly once a week. The hope is right now, and I haven't broken it down enough to know, but I'm thinking that it will be a 2-week shoot because I have to bring the actors in, and that's going to be the major expense, is paying for the plane tickets, accommodations, food, all that, and then I probably have to actually pay them something to be in it. Horror of horrors, and some of the other actors and stuff like that. So anyways, I haven't broken it down yet, but I'm just in my mind right now. I think we can shoot it in 2 weeks. I sure hope so. Maybe some pickups or maybe some smaller scenes here and there. We may, I don't know if I would go out to California to film a couple of the scenes, or I would just let my sons do it out there. I think either of them are capable of directing it. One of them is probably almost capable of shooting it if he had all the lights and everything. But hopefully, I've sent out an email to some of the crew from my first 2 or 3 films. So I'm hoping to get at least a couple of them to work on it. Then I'm reaching out to a local community college in hopes of getting 3 or 4 students to work on it, because that's pretty much what I did with my previous films. Some of the crew was on a lot of the shoots. I don't think any of the crew except me was on all of the shoots. And we literally had kind of the equivalent of day players, someone who could come and work for a day, which obviously isn't ideal. But when you're making movies in the guerrilla world of filmmaking, that's what you do, what you got to do. So that's where we stand right now. So maybe in the early going, there won't really be any reports, any updates. So maybe whenever there is, I'll commit to making one of these whenever I feel like it's worth your while. In the meantime, if you know, here's my pitch, since I'm not going to be on Kickstarter, not with a 30-minute video, and I don't have a trailer or anything. If you know anyone, again, who has money to literally throw away, let me know. Put me in touch with them or put them in touch with me, and I'll explain everything to that person, send the script to that person, whatever it takes. But mostly I'm just doing this to chronicle my journey. I think it might be interesting to look back when it all finishes. Maybe I'll end up making this like a behind the scenes. Speaking of that, hopefully I'll get some maybe student or someone who wants to make like a behind the scenes, make the making of Dummy Line. So if you know someone who might want to do that, if you know someone who would be interested in working on the crew for nothing but a lot of great experience and a fun time, you can also let me know that. So this video has been a multi-purpose video, and I appreciate you watching it until the very, very, very end.